Hi everyone, welcome to another CSS animation tutorial for beginners. In this series, I help you to learn front-end web development by taking you step by step through all different kinds of creative HTML and CSS projects. Today, we will build animated background effect together. I have always loved optical illusions. They reveal interesting things about how our brain pieces visual information together to make sense of what we are looking at. I also like HTML, CSS and front-end web development in general, and I have always wanted to create a project where I can put these two things together. You know how sometimes they present you with an optical illusion like this one, and most people wouldn't believe that all these balls are actually the same color. What I see are balls of 3 different colors, or that squares A and B are the same color. They don't look the same to me. Luckily, it's also extremely easy to prove that the colors are the same by animating between 2 images like this. This particular illusion is called Munker illusion, and if you want to learn a bit more about how it works, I will link a short blog post in the video description. In today's CSS animation tutorial for beginners, we will take a look at 3 very different types of optical illusions. We will choose one, analyze how exactly it tricks our eyes, and we will create our original version and turn it into animated background effect using just HTML and CSS. This is what happens when science meets front-end web development. Welcome to another episode of my CSS experiment series. This will be a quick one. One of the most famous optical illusions, called Spinning Dancer, was created in 2003 in Japan. What's so interesting about it is that some observers will see the dancer spinning to the left and some will see it spinning to the right. If you focus hard enough, you should be able to swap the direction of spin. For me, it's easier if I just focus on the foot. This illusion is based on the lack of visual cues of depth, so our brain randomly decides if the legs and feet are in front of it or behind it at the point where we first see the image. If you can't make it spin the other way, just by looking at it, we can add some visuals like eyes. And now you can see the outline works for both directions. It will also work for any other shape. If you want to watch it a bit longer to see if you can make it spin the other way, I will link all featured illusions in the video description. The second type of illusions I find really interesting is something like this. Look at the image, what do you see? For most people, it will just look like a random collection of blobs. It doesn't really make much sense. But now, when I show you this image, oh yeah, it's actually a cowboy riding a horse. Now look back at the original image. You can clearly see the cowboy now, and it's been imprinted in your brain. So from now on, you will always be able to see it, even though it was so difficult before. Now that you know how this works, let's try one more. Some of you might be able to see what's on the picture, but believe me, it's difficult for most people. But when I reveal the actual image, oh yeah, it's a frog sitting on a leaf. Now look back at the original image. Once it's revealed, you cannot unsee it. Now the frog is clearly there. Our brain made sense of the blobs, and this illusion is forever broken for you. You will always be able to see the frog now. The third group of illusions involves color and how inaccurate and subjective our perception is. I remember when I saw this illusion back in 2015, I couldn't believe that the 2 rectangles highlighting the dresses are exactly the same color. How could they possibly be? One is blue and black and the other is gold and white, right? Apparently these colors look different to different people, but I think we can all agree that these 2 highlighted sections on both dresses are not identical colors. But they are. Before we explain what's going on, let's see a different example of the same effect. The same principle is happening here with the 2 dogs. Which one is lighter color? The one on the bottom, right? Actually, they are identical colors. It just appears different because our brain doesn't perceive colors objectively, but it adjusts for light or dark conditions. In this case, it compensates for darker shade of blue at the bottom part of the image background. It has to do with how our brain ensures that perceived color on objects remains relatively constant under varying light conditions. The highlighted section on the left dress is black color under yellow light, and highlighted part on the right dress is a white color under blue shadow. At least that's what our brain tells us. In reality, they are absolutely identical in every way. I still almost can't believe it even when I'm looking at the proof right now. Let's build our own version of this amazing illusion. I drew a nice dinosaur for you. You can download it in the video description. You can show this illusion to people and ask them which one of these appears lighter to you. And when they say the one on the bottom, we click reveal and we will see, oh, actually both of them are the same color. This will be a very easy CSS and HTML tutorial for beginners. I want to show you how to animate gradients and how to use adjacent sibling combinator, which is one of very useful but not well-known CSS selectors. It allows us to change styles on elements based on events that occur on sibling elements, as long as all of the elements are on the same level in HTML structure. In this case, when we click checkbox to reveal illusion, the entire background element will animate and remove the gradient. I will explain everything in detail as usual. Let's learn some CSS animation techniques together. Click the like button if you're getting any value from my tutorials and want to improve your front-end web development skills. You can also subscribe and click the bell icon if you want to be notified when new creative coding tutorial comes out. This will be a quick one. Let's start. In index.html, I create basic markup. Input with an ID of checkbox1, type checkbox and name checkbox. Label for this input, so for attribute, will be set to checkbox1. This way, label and checkbox input are connected, and whenever I click the input itself or the label text, both will trigger the checkbox to get checked. It's good to use labels because it provides shorter description and also it makes it easier for users to click on the input element. Now I create h1 main heading element and I give it class of question and text something like which dinosaur is darker and which is lighter color. I create another heading. This will have class of answer and text will say both dinosaurs are the same color! Exclamation mark. Yes. Actually, let's change h2 to h1 to make both of them the same size. And label for input element will say reveal, because when I click it, our illusion will be revealed. Now I create a div with a class of dinosaurs. I will need it to center both dinosaur images horizontally and vertically. I will show you how in a minute. Inside, I create two section elements with a class of dinosaur. These will hold our dinosaur images. In style CSS, I will start with some simple reset rules to make sure our page appears the same in different browsers. Some browsers don't have any padding, but some do, and I want our code to look consistent. So I use star selector, which targets all elements on the page, and I set margin to 0, padding to 0, and box size into border box. Border box means that padding and border will be included in elements total width and height. It's a great new CSS property that makes creating layouts so much easier. I will also set font in our project here. I will use shortcut property called font, which will allow me to combine font weight, font size, and font family CSS properties into one declaration like this. Font is bold, 35 pixels, and Helvetica. We will learn one of my favorite ways to animate gradients today. Gradient is not considered a color, but an image, so it's notoriously difficult to smoothly transition between two different gradient backgrounds. Gradient is considered to be an image, and in CSS you cannot smoothly animate between two images. To make it work, we will have to use a simple trick. I will show you the trick when we get to it later in this video, but for this trick to work, we need to set body to overflow hidden, to hide potential scroll bars. We have two h1 elements, one with a class of question and one with a class of answer. First, I will declare their shared styles, so I just use h1 selector to target both. I set both headings to position absolute, top 50%, left 50%. Now I want to style each one slightly differently, so I target only the first one, h1 element with a class of question. Keep in mind, you need to write the selector exactly like this if you choose to use both tag and class, no space between. I set question to width 100%, transform translate -50%, -50%, because on lines 11, 12 and 13 we gave it position absolute, top 50, left 50. This combination of properties along with transform translate is so-called absolute positioning technique, and it's a great, easy way to center anything in the middle. It will be positioned relatively to its closest parent with position property on that parent set to either relative or absolute. Parents without one of these properties will be ignored and skipped. If there is no parent with position set to relative or absolute, it will get centered in the middle of the page. Text align will be center. The other h1 heading with class of answer will have transform set to rotate x. I will give it 0 and change it a bit later. Text align right and margin right, for example 100 pixels. Input element, which is our checkbox, will be position relative, top 100 pixels, left 100 pixels, width 20 pixels, height 20 pixels. Label will be the same, position relative, top 100 pixels, left 100 pixels. Back in index.html, here on line 14, I create one more div element with a class of background. In style CSS, I target that div and give it background property set to linear gradient between 3 colors. It's important I start with white for the animation I plan to do today. The next is bright yellow and saturated blue. I want the background to cover the entire browser window, so I set position to absolute, width 100%, height 100%, top 0, left 0. Now it's covering all our other elements, so I give label z-index10. Also input will get z-index10, and so will h1 heading element with a class of question. I target the div with a class of dinosaurs, and I give it border 1 pixel solid black. We also have 2 section elements with a class of dinosaur, so I target both of them and set their background image property to URL dinosaur.png. You can download my dinosaur drawing with gradient applied in the video description. I drew it by hand, and then I used pen tool in Adobe Illustrator to convert my hand-drawn image into a vector. There is one version that's just gradient, and other version is gradient with thin black border. If you want to check out latest offers on Adobe Creative Cloud to get Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, there is a link in the video description. I got them initially just because I thought it looked good on my front-end web developer CV when I was applying for jobs, but now I'm just so used to them. Adobe makes the best apps. I need to give the dinosaur width and height so we can actually see it. It's a section element in HTML markup, so I also have to give it position relative. I will change height to 325, and I want the entire dinosaur to be shown, so I say background size contain and background repeat to no repeat. Let's give both section elements borders so we can center it. 1 pixel solid red. Dinosaurs is a div element that is direct parent for both section elements. I give it top 50%. Also position absolute, so top value gets applied. Left 50% and transform translate -50% to center it exactly in the middle of the page. I remove border on dinosaurs div and on dinosaur section elements. On line 41 we declared linear gradient background between 3 colors. By default it will split the area evenly between these 3 colors, but I don't want that. Actually, I want to make the white area as small as possible. I only need small white portion, so gradients fade smoothly into white when I animate it down. I'll show you in a minute. If I set 10% on our bright yellow color like this, it means the gradient between white and yellow will be only from 0 to 10% from top. At 10%, we already reach full yellow, and from that point onwards, downwards, we are already starting to move towards blue, which is the next gradient step. See how the white bit almost disappeared? Now, full blue color is at the bottom of the page at 100%. I want to move the point where we reach full blue 0C, 0A, F3 color at 80% from top, and the remaining 20% will be the same blue color. I do that by putting 80% here like this. This will make our optical illusion more pronounced. What do you think? Now the dinosaurs definitely don't look the same to me, even though I know they are the same color because we just built this code together. And we know we are only changing the background color. We haven't done anything with the color of dinosaurs. Click the like button please if you're getting any value from my tutorials. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to get more tutorials just like this one. So now I want to apply a different style to background div whenever checkbox gets checked. There are two types of CSS selectors I can use here. One is a plus sign, which is called adjacent sibling combinator. This will only match element if it matches the selector. If both elements are siblings, which means they are on the same level in HTML structure, and if it immediately follows the first element. So in HTML, I would have to have checkbox, and immediately after, it would have to have div with a class of background. If you want to animate siblings, but you want to avoid this rule that requires elements to follow immediately after each other, we can use something called general sibling combinator. I also call it little squiggly line. This will match second element if it comes after the first one, but it doesn't have to be immediately after. There could be elements in between. So I say when input with an ID of checkbox 1 is checked, little squiggly line, general sibling combinator, find the next sibling with a class of background and apply these styles to it. Checkbox is on line 11 in HTML structure. Div with a class of background is on the same level, so they are siblings. But it is on line 14. There are two heading elements in between, but it will still work. So when checkbox is checked, apply this to background. Let's try transform scale 0.5. That's fast. I need to add transition time on background element. Let's try 1 second ease in. That's better. I can also scale just along X and Y axis. Did you know that? Look what happens if I do scale Y. Let's make it completely disappear by giving it 0 as an argument. But I also want it to collapse all the way down, not just fold in the middle of the page like this. I want the gradient to appear to fall off the page. To do that is very easy. I'm using transform scale property here, so on base background element, I can use transform origin and set it to bottom. You can also try top or left here if you want to experiment. You can do pretty cool things combining different transforms with different transform origins. I will show you in some other video, or you can follow Online Tutorials YouTube channel. He's the expert in creating amazing button effects with these two properties. I also want to animate both H1 heading elements when checkbox gets checked, so I create two more declarations. One will apply styles to first heading with a class of question, and the other to the other one with a class of answer. Before I finish this, I want to move dinosaurs sideways independently of each other. Our dinosaurs are background image on section elements. Both are children of the same div, so to target them separately, I can say section nth child 1 and section nth child 2. I want to move the first one to the right, so on plus direction on horizontal x-axis. Transform translate 150 pixels. And the second one to the left. Actually, let's leave the second one as it is for now. Just to show you, you can also use translate Y to move it up and down. This will be part of the challenge at the end of this video, so try to remember. So when checkbox is checked, I want question to rotate 90 degrees along horizontal x-axis, which will make it disappear. You can see on line 17, I am also using transform property to translate the element in the middle of the page to center it. If I just leave it like this, you can see that transform translate is being overwritten by transform rotate and our centering breaks. Unfortunately, in CSS, translate, scale, skew, and other transforms are all part of the same transform property, and I cannot declare them separately like this. I need to keep that in mind and think of it as one declaration. Let's make the transition on H1 elements a bit faster. Let's try 0.5 and background as well on line 48. I changed transition to 0.5 seconds. To fix our broken transform on question element, I just need to make sure that base transform and the one when checkbox gets checked don't override each other. To do that is not difficult. Here on line 70, I add translate -50% -50%, and I also keep rotate x 90 degrees here. And on the base element on line 18, I add rotate x 0 degrees to our existing transform property. Now it works great. The second heading, I gave it class answer. I wanted to do the opposite thing and rotate into position. So here I give it rotate x 0. And on base element on line 23, I give it transform rotate 90 degrees. The first part of animation is hidden because this element is behind background gradient, so I bring it forward by setting its Z index to 10. This will only work for elements that have position set to relative or absolute. Okay, challenge time. Would you be able to animate the dinosaurs up and down along vertical y-axis when the illusion is revealed to make them come closer together and make it more obvious that their colors are actually identical? The best way to do this is by animating translate y property, because animating something like margin top or left position will cause document reflow and it will cause browser to recalculate position of every element on the page. Translating elements using transform property will just affect that one element, and it's much more efficient and it's considered a good practice. It will not have any performance effect in such a small project like this one, but it's good to learn the best practices from the beginning. Also, if you want to connect checked event on checkbox to dinosaurs, you need to make sure all of these elements are siblings. Otherwise it will not work using adjacent sibling combinator like I just showed you. If you are more advanced, there is even simpler way to do this with just plain vanilla JavaScript. And if you know Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, are you able to create your own images and see if it works with your own custom images as well? Let me know what you build in the comments down below. I'm really interested to see your creations. If you learned something new today, click the like button please. More tutorials coming soon, so you can subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to get a notification. Well done if you followed all the way here. You have dedication, and that's the most important thing. People who don't give up are the ones who succeed and become a master of front-end web development. See you next time.